Welcome to Directionally Correct, a People in Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott. I'm Jim Henderson, president of Louisiana Tech University, and today's guest, and looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
I distinctly remember after comprehensive days, we would take our comprehensive exams, and I'd get my voice recorder and walk home and just try to replay what I wrote that day on the way over to Alabama Street in Georgia where I was living. I still have all those recordings of what I wrote for that day.
Really? Yeah. And it was just for posterity's sake or what?
Well, I mean, there's a great fear that you're not going to pass comprehensive exams. So I need a record of what I actually wrote.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you be recording you messing up?
Well, yeah. But the point is you could pinpoint your mistakes, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Or at least to replay what you did.
I took an undergraduate course in American national government once, and he started the first class saying the final exam is comprehensive for the entire class.
Yeah.
There were no other exams, no other assignments.
Just that?
What is this? And the final exam was describe the effects on the institutions of American national government of a prolonged period of scarcity.
What?
Nothing else. Nothing else. This is all you need to know for the entire year. Is it? And it's
wow. And so I just wrote a bunch of stuff, and I got an A.
Really?
And probably was the most creative writing I've ever done.
That is so wild. So can you repeat I remember got the times of scarcity. What?
It described the effects on the institutions of American national government, various branches of government departments, of a prolonged period of scarcity.
So, I guess you kind of have to write about the Depression. That's right.
Has it helped you here at Law Tech?
Every day I draw lessons learned from that.
Doing more with less.
Prolonged period of scarcity.
Yeah.
So
Put on the resume. I got an A.
I got an A in this course, so that was it.
Well, before we started recording, you said you had come across a podcast before. I actually know that you came across it.
You do?
I do. You just don't remember this. We met before. So it was either 2 or 3 years ago, I won Young Alumnus of the Year. And this is when you were president of the University of Louisiana system.
That's right.
And we met in Dr. Geis's press box, Dr. Geis being the previous president at the time. And we just hit it off because you had a previous management background. And the embarrassing story for me, which thank goodness you don't remember this, is you were saying, I'm thinking about, I've been the president of the University of Louisiana system, but I'm thinking about getting back into, going to a particular college. And I was like, you really should come be a professor in the business school at Louisiana Tech.
I do remember.
And then a year later, you're the president of the university. I'm like, wow, I really lowballed you on the potential.
But my opponent does include a professorship in the College of Business. So you're partly right. And I will tell you, being back with faculty and students is, I feel 10 years younger than I did. It's, Baton Rouge is great.
Yeah.
You're doing important work, but it just drains every bit of energy from you to do nothing but politics. Of course, my office was right across the street from the Capitol. I had a north-facing window that overlooked the beautiful ExxonMobil refinery.
Of course, yeah.
Facing window that had the Port of Baton Rouge and the Mississippi River. And so it was a great deal. Relaxing, fun, serene.
Well, this is an amazing place up here. My gosh, the most beautiful views of Ruston I've ever seen.
Yeah, 16th floor Wiley Tower. It's hard to beat.
Well, one of my greatest accomplishments was convincing another student that Wiley Tower was the first building built in Ruston. And they wound up repeating that to other people.
So F.J. Taylor wanted to have the tallest building between Shreveport and Jackson, Mississippi.
Really?
It may still well be. No, but when the train passes, you'll feel it shake a little bit. And it's
makes you feel secure.
Makes you feel secure. And look, when I walk into my office, the south facing window, you can see the paper mill in Hodge, which is, you drive it, it's 18 miles south. Probably as the crow flies, it's probably 17 miles. So my grandfather worked for 45 years.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
Really?
My mom used to ride the bus from Hodge to here every day in the 50s to go to school. So it's, it's kind of that it's got that very special emotional feeling.
So it's a small world. My sister-in-law's dad was, I think, the union rep down at that facility. So it's just a small world. I am curious. You mentioned, so you were the president of the University of Louisiana system, and now you're the president of Louisiana Tech. As a person who knows nothing about higher education, how that works, how are those jobs different? Like, what does one do versus the other?
Well, so very practically, the one in Baton Rouge answers to a 16-person board that's gubernatorially appointed. One member is appointed by students, elected by the student body of all 9 institutions, and you supervise 9 university presidents. And that's the job. So it's a lot of politics in the Louisiana legislature, a lot of policy conversations with the other system heads, the LSU system, the Southern system, the community college system, and then of course the Board of Regents, which is the coordinating board. But yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of conversations with presidents, and a lot of your accomplishments are preventing problems from either happening or being exacerbated.
Oh, you're like the CIA. You prevent the terrorist attack that nobody ever knows that happens. It's very interesting.
A lot of talk of these are times of scarcity.
Yeah, it's so. And one of the things, so you think if you're not the person mired in an issue, helping with communications, you're not blinded by that bias, right? And so you can really help. And that, my background was journalism and English, and so it really did a lot of that. And so in that way, you're preventing problems from becoming worse. And then, developing relationships with policymakers across the state, and then of course in the state capitol, and spending a lot of, I guess I testified over 200 times in legislative committees.
Really? Oh Lord.
Wow.
What it says about me, you guys can diagnose this, is that my most comfortable place is sitting at a table in a committee room and testifying, because it's just none of this real personal interaction. You're only connecting with ideas and concepts, and
just another Tuesday.
Another Tuesday.
Yeah. What about being the president here, though?
Yeah. So I just left a breakfast conversation, and this is something that I've been doing. It's we'll have breakfast with about 18 people from campus, and you'll have a dean sitting next to a maintenance worker, sitting next to someone who works at student services or recruiting. And it's just a casual conversation. It's a little bit contrived. I have them go around the room, tell me who they are, what they do, how long they've been here, and what is it that they love about Louisiana Tech. And inevitably someone, usually an engineer or someone in physics or chemistry, will say, what I like about Louisiana Tech, and I always interrupt them. I said, I don't care what you like about Louisiana Tech. What do you love about Louisiana Tech? Because it hits you in a different place.
Yeah.
And then they have to think a minute. And, we used the term the tech family. I'll be honest, it didn't sit well with me before I got here. I was like, it seems contrived. It's like when you're working.
Well, we weren't sure if we wanted to adopt you anyway. So I feel it's mutual.
Well, so it says, dear team.
Yeah.
And you look at who the distribution is on the email, and we're not a team. And it sits wrong. You have a bad attitude for the rest of the message. So the family thing sit wrong with me until I was immersed in it. And I thought, it might be the most apt description of who we are. So that was great conversation. Tanya, my wife, joins me for all of those. Hopefully we're going to get through every employee in the first year. We're doing it by birthdays. So you have that astrological component to it. It's one this Taurus and Gemini, I think, which I have no idea what that means.
We're big into that stuff here. Astrology.
Well, Iris-Psych and astrology are very closely linked, are they not?
Well, it's like running a city, right? Like you got a lot of constituent parts at La Tech, but I think that's what I remember most fondly about the university. It felt very familial. It's a very comfortable place to be. It's like a really hidden gem that probably not a lot of students are really aware of outside of the immediate area.
It's our best recruiting tool is presence. When we get someone to campus,
yeah, absolutely.
Closing rate on that is phenomenal, because they've been immersed in. It's not because of our palatial facilities or it's because of the people, and it really sells itself when we get them here. So finding ways to tell that story compellingly to those who aren't on campus might be one of our biggest challenges, and so we're always working on that. But yeah, it's a unique place.
Well, when they built the Walmart grocery store across the street, that was a game changer.
Man, that's amazing. And you know what's coming next year. Just less than about a mile and a half from my house is Buc-ee's.
Oh yeah.
Harbutton Drive. They're expecting 15,000 cars a day to stop at Buc-ee's.
It's unfathomable.
Oh,
That's going to be massive for the city. Like it's huge employer, huge monetary injection to the city. A lot of exposure for tech.
I remember we covered it probably almost 2 years ago now. There was like a sign with all the pay rates at Buc-ee's, and it's just, you would never expect it. I mean, like, I think the lowest paying job was like $15 or $17 an hour, and you could make well over $100,000 getting in any of the managerial capacity there. It's like, it's a well-run organization.
It really is, and it's got such a following. I mean, the devotees, people that wear the Buc-ee's shirts everywhere. It's unbelievable. I finally stopped it when it was years.
I gave my son a Buc-ee's blanket for Christmas.
Yeah,
we're on board.
well, it was best brisket sandwich I'd had that day. Anyway, it was fantastic.
I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I saw a Buc-ee's sticker right outside the Capitol on a handrail.
Wow.
I have a photo of it. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, I'm actually headed to Edinburgh in first week of June.
Oh, you're going to love it. I got tips. You need tips.
Good. I'll need them. My son's graduating from med school, and I wanted to give him something. And supposedly our heritage is Norway to Scotland, to Ireland to Louisiana. So where you go to Edinburgh and kill some brain cells, and then go to Bergen and walk to Trolltunga.
No,
I speak in Scots language now.
Absolutely. Well, if you're going to Edinburgh, you get on the Stairmaster right now because it is uphill both ways everywhere you go.
Well, I've been going through Scottish Twitter to try to learn the dialects.
Oh, good luck.
They speak a different language.
That is a different language. I like go to the southern Louisiana. It's like, oh.
I married a girl from Gaydon, which is south of Lafayette. It's not the end of the world.
Ocean.
Met her on the swamp tour. She had the prettiest web feet I'd ever seen.
I wanted to actually come back to more of your history real quick. You talked about Hodge. You talked about, kind of your legacy heritage. But we heard prepping for this that you actually were a country music station DJ for a while. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was at Kicks 104 in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Actually, we were the small market music station of the year multiple times. Won CMA awards for that. I didn't get to go to the CMAs. I was not their main star by a stretch. And listen, and in that time, late 80s, early 90s, was kind of the resurgence of country music.
Yeah.
You had George Strait and Randy Travis had come back and brought back some of the old traditional sounds of country music. Then you had these great art. Vince Gill emerged at that time. In my last month on country radio, I played the debut single from this duo that I'm not sure whatever happened to them, but Brooks and Dunn.
More Louisiana Tech folks.
Brand new man. And I thought, this is, these guys might make something of themselves. So since I've been here, I've gotten to know Kix Brooks. And, just one of them, just the most amazing, interesting, fun-loving people I've ever met. I don't develop personal relationships well. I'm a little bit of an introvert. Kix, you don't have a choice. He puts his arms around you. And he's such a great friend of Louisiana Tech, great supporter of Louisiana Tech, but just a cool guy. And I'm so happy he and Ronnie are doing the reboot series, going back and getting their old songs, bringing in new artists. They might have seen Jelly Roll, who I was not familiar with at all.
He just burst on the scene. He came out years ago. All of a sudden, he's everywhere.
Yeah, amazing. But Brooks and Dunn. But that was the new era of country music. It's kind of gone into what they call bro country now. That I don't necessarily get my arms around, but there's some good guys now. Chris Stapleton and has really kind of piqued my interest lately.
Under the Red Light Moon was about Stowe's, which was still open when I was an undergrad here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you can hear, the red dirt road. You can picture where he was walking. He was sang those songs. He's got a song on his Kix had a solo album before they got together. And the gist of the song is he's explaining to this girl from somewhere up north that he's not a Yankee, or he's not a country guy from Louisiana. He's from way up north around Shreveport. And these Cajuns, and it's fantastic.
Well, how do you give from Hodge, studying scarcity and economic networks, to Fayetteville, doing radio DJing, to back to Louisiana?
So when
Mr. President,
Dad graduated from Tech in 1948. He was part of it. He was here and played for Joe. He's from Jennings, Louisiana. He was on. Everybody will remember this. The 1939 Jennings State Championship.
I remember it.
People can't stop talking about it.
Legendary team.
The only building at that time was Wiley Tower.
Yeah, it's perfect. You could see it from Jennings in a clear day.
We eventually talk about things of substance. I just want you to know that.
Well, with that, the dad graduated in 48. He started coaching in Shreveport. And then my mother was quite a bit younger. She was 17 years younger than dad. She started teaching in Shreveport, the same school. So they met and got married. And then because dad was so much older, I was a late child for him. He decided that he was going to die just any day now. And he lived another 4 years. Oh, he was going to die. And so he told my mom, you have to get at your doctorate. So she had already gotten her master's at Tech. We moved to Fayetteville, so she could get it in Arkansas. And we just stayed. That was a great place to grow up and live. And then everyone finally made their way back to Louisiana. So.
Fayetteville is an amazing city. Like that whole western part of Arkansas.
So think about this. I remember we would drive into Fayetteville and there was a population sign of 29,000 people. The whole Metroplex was about 75,000 people. We were just there for the Bulldogs against the Razorbacks in the fall. And that whole area now is over 500,000 people. But I did go to Venetian Inn in Tawnytown, which was my favorite restaurant in the 80s. And they still have the same cutlery.
Really?
The shack, the best T-bone steak and with a side of spaghetti you can get anywhere in Tawnytown, Arkansas. So I
hope they sharpened the steak knives in that time. Yeah. Well, let's pivot a little bit. So we got a university president here where it's hard not to talk about right now the wave of AI that's crashing over all of society. But I think about it especially about the future of higher education. What do you see is the role of AI going forward? What's the role of higher education moving forward? Go whatever direction you want to go with this, but just what's your perspective? Because I'm sure you're in a lot of closed door meetings that we're not a part of, and you could tell us a little bit more about what the future looks like.
Well, I'll be honest, we're struggling, and as everybody is, with AI. I mean, what are the implications? Certainly in the classroom, at this breakfast this morning, one of the professors teaches freshman composition, and AI is anathema to them, right? And as we could tell. But at the same time, we have folks working in Craig Van Slype, who works in CIS, is one of the nation's premier thinkers and talkers on AI when it comes to computer applications and utilizing that. And what a great productivity tool it can be.
Absolutely.
Yes. We also have a professor in industrial engineering that's thinking about AI and how you use AI to improve industrial processes, these kinds of things. And in IO Psych, we're talking about, okay, what are the implications for AI when it comes to organizational culture? There's a lot of people that are afraid of it. Is it going to replace my job?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm on the side that doesn't think it's going to replace a lot of jobs. I think it's going to replace a lot of tasks.
Yeah.
And it's going to free people up to do those things that we're best at as humans. And that's creativity and problem solving and this interaction with each other, that those basic human qualities that add so much to an organization. It's going to free us up to do more of that.
Yeah. How is it being integrated into like the curriculum? Like I see two angles. Like one, if you can use it on the job, you should be able to use it in the classroom, right? It's just a tool at that point. On the other side, it's tantamount to cheating in certain ways, right?
Yeah. Like, when is the stigma against using AI going to go away in academia?
So let me put it in this context. Maybe this is an appropriate metaphor. So, everyone is big on best practice. This year about best practice research. Any organization,
of course,
try to do something. What are other people doing, and let's replicate that. What they fail to recognize is sometimes it wasn't the best practice that improved the organization. It was the process of developing that best practice, and you learn so much from that process. So if you think about
thinking about it, going through it.
So if you think about writing, writing is not just what ends up on the paper. It's all of the thinking and preparation, editing, reasoning you went through to come up with those ideas. And so that's a very important part. So in that realm, you can use AI tools to help you think through things. And so you don't use Wikipedia as a source. But boy, Wikipedia is a window to a whole lot of sources that you could go and find, but you got to go through that work to do that. But in other ways, it's kind of like the advent of the scientific calculator, right? When you think about how calculators came out in the 70s, your math teacher would say, don't use that calculator because you get in your 20s and 30s, you won't have a calculator with you. And
like, yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Most advanced calculators you can have. So it's part of that. It's adapting to something new. But again, when I talk about what we're doing in CIS and what we're doing in industrial engineering and so many other places, we're leading the way in new applications of AI that I think are going to serve our students well.
This is what I love about being on the college campus, to have time to think. And, it's your job. It's your job to think. You come here to explore ideas. and be a leader, right? You can,
Yeah, that's right. And then they can become a little isolated. So if you just are only having those conversations within
of course,
your school,
yeah.
you're missing a lot of it. So we do a great job of bringing employers and other thinkers to the table. In fact, we just had a lecture earlier this week. This guy that he comes from a very left of center thinking, talking about AI and exploitation of workers. And I was listening to it. It was kind of a one-sided conversation, but it was great. It was a lecture. It's supposed to be one-sided.
Yeah.
But then he opened up the conversations, and there were a few students that asked him questions, but the professors that asked questions from very different angles. Like we were talking about the exploitation of workers and that they'll start to be valued less than what their output is for the organization. He says, well, how's that any different than it's been since the beginning? And so it was fascinating to look at. I actually started talking about the Luddites in the 19th century and the, Keynes in the 30s, talking about technical unemployment. In the 60s, it was that bastion of educational writing, Time magazine, that said by the year 2000, we would all be looking for ways to spend our leisure time because there was not enough work to keep us all occupied. Waiting on that.
Working 4 to 5 hours a week. Yeah. Well, I want to come back to your answer about the AI question for a second. So what I heard from you is you should be using AI to help you express the thoughts that you've already formulated, but you shouldn't be using AI to come up with the thoughts without thinking about it critically. And I actually don't know if we have an answer to this as a society, but how do we do that? How do you distinguish between the two as an educator?
Yeah, I think that's really the question because, coming up with the thoughts and actually the process of distilling those thoughts into language that you make to someone else, you're not always going to have an AI tool with you. And to be honest, AI doesn't do it well. It's very good on some technical things, but when it comes to those connections to emotions and going back to
It's very sanitized,
right, the arts of rhetoric and how to talk about things in compelling ways and how you use words and the artistry of words. Go back to the founding of Louisiana Tech. If you go see Harry Howard's diploma in our library, it says Louisiana Tech University, and then it has the motto that served this university for our first 50 years. It says, life without industry is guilt.
Whoa.
Industry without art is brutality.
Some deep stuff.
That is some deep stuff. But when you think of what those words meant at the time, industry wasn't just production of goods and services. It was the value of work in and of itself. And art wasn't just the aesthetic. It was society's attempts to perfect morality. And so that makes it even deeper. And that's what this is. AI is a productivity tool, but it misses the art, that human art that we add to so many of these things. And we've got to develop that as an institution. As we're training you to use the tools, we've got to educate you for these human qualities that are going to serve you well, both in life, career, family, society. You're going to be civically engaged.
And I think about that is like Soviet era architecture, right? It's totally utilitarian. No artistic value whatsoever.
So Tanya and I were in Havana a few years ago on an educational thing. And as you're driving there, and Havana's got some beautiful architecture. And then you drive by this concrete monstrosity, the Soviet embassy in Havana. And it just is like, it just slaps you in the face.
It's like a bunker, right?
This is the height of Soviet era architecture. Stunning.
Even their art is like very austere, right? It's very practical. It's just like we're gathering grains in a field. So, okay.
That's wild. I don't know much about Soviet architecture. Sorry.
Well, think of the Squidward's house in SpongeBob.
No. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that too modern a reference?
I don't know.
Cole has some kiddos at the house. I'm sure he's much for him on that cartoon.
Well, we are on the Paw Patrols.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's good time.
All the good stuff that's out there now. I am curious, though. So what do you think, just selfishly, because we've got Dr. Tillman Sheets here as well, what do you think about Louisiana Tech's IO Psychology PhD program?
It's amazing. It's the greatest academic program on the planet Earth.
Go on.
No, it's one of these programs that was developed kind of at the beginning of this movement, understanding how organizational cultures were important and how individuals are going to create that culture, and how do you build your organization human capital to best advance your organization's mission and goals. And look, if anything, it's only become more relevant, and it is certainly we're at the vanguard of it, and I think we're going to continue to try to grow that program. I'm one that's enamored of it because I see it in action. I've been in kind of a CEO or lead manager position since I was 21 years old. You make a lot of mistakes there, but you also learn that every organization is really about people. And so when you understand that, then you understand how important IOPSYCH is to your success as an individual and as an organization. So I'm a huge fan of the program, and it's one that is, and its results speak for themselves.
It was the best decision of my life, coming to Louisiana Tech, coming to this program. It's opened up so many doors that I didn't even imagine possible. Like I was in psychometrics, developing assessments.
It was definitely top 100 best decisions for me. So yeah, definitely top 100. It cracked is like right at the top 100. Well, I know your doctorate is in kind of a very closely related discipline, psychology. What got you into that, and then what was your focus of your research?
Well, I got into it because it was a very practical application of the work that I'd been involved with, and I really started to realize how important the top management team was to what we did as an organization. Found that out. I'd gone to to lead a community college that is brand new. It's the first college in the state of Louisiana that the entire master plan was built at one time. So very modern buildings, the latest in technology at the time. It was also one of the only community college, 2-year colleges in the state that wasn't growing. And I scratched my head about that. And so I walked into the first leadership team meeting, and I walked in and every person looked like me, gray hair, mostly the same backgrounds. They'd all spent their entire career at this institution, and it wasn't their fault, but there's no way that they could have been capable of understanding the customer that they were trying to serve.
Yeah.
Right. And so we immediately just added some people to the team to diversify the group experientially, demographically, psychometrically in some ways.
He's clearly a listener. He points at Scott when he says psychometric. Like, you get it.
Was he speaking my language, nerdy?
And some of these psychometric issues, these tight,
The indicators sort of things.
some of them are probably better than others.
Definitely.
There's tons of writing about that. Some people want to dismiss them as junk science. They're not that. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you,
It depends.
they become self-perpetuating. It defines you. So then you spend your whole career to live up to your profile. I get that, but it also helps you understand the different styles, the way people bring different things to the table, the way that they prefer to. I love to think conceptually.
Yeah.
I love to think analytically. I hate structure. I don't want to think about rules. I don't want someone to tell me the reasons why, whether it's the rules
love that.
or the rules of the state of Louisiana or whatever it is. I don't want to think about that. I want to solve problems. When it comes to personal interactions, my wife is exactly the opposite profile that I do, either Myers-Briggs or emergent ethics, whatever. So I was invited to roast our priest. Yeah. So we get there, and we're kind of new to Shreveport at the time, and they had this. It's called the gingerbread house, and so one of the things that the children that they served had built these gingerbread houses. And that was the pre-function thing. Well, she goes to the restroom, and I'm by myself, and she comes back after an inordinate amount of time. Personal issue, but anyway, I'm by a wall by myself studying this one gingerbread house, and she goes, "You're ridiculous. Why aren't you mingling with people?" And this is because it just sits me over. But then I'm up on stage in front of 500, 600 people, perfectly at ease.
Yeah.
Perfectly at ease. So it's an introversion, but it's an introversion around the personal connection, not about the ideas.
I love gingerbread houses. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. And by the way, I was the 5th roaster. The first 4 didn't know what a roast was, so they just went and said great things about the priest, and then I had to go.
Oh, God.
Mercy. But it was fun. It was fun.
Mercy indeed.
How do you roast a priest?
Yeah, it was a lot of observations.
You're going to hell.
There's stuff like
You gotta.
the 2 priests from that met up, the diocesan priest that met up and the afterlife, and one of them said to the other, "Gosh, man, after all those years in a parish, isn't heaven just wonderful?" And the other said, "Hey, man, this isn't heaven."
Well, hot in here.
Things like that.
So why is all the Sacramento wine gone? Yeah, that's all he's missing.
Yeah, this is going nowhere good, is it?
I have this idea that one day, whatever, but I'll take a NEOPI. So it's like a personality indicator, gives a variety of sort of aspects of your personality. And when I die, they'll etch that on my tombstone. And so someone will get a good idea of what I was like as a person just by looking at my metrics.
Just put the MBTI up there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I could do that too, right?
Yeah.
Heroes.
I had a friend that said on his tombstone, all he wanted it to say was he was amiable.
Really amiable.
That's not,
Huh.
Yeah.
if that's your goal in life, that's not a bad goal.
I like the classic. I told you I was sick.
That's great.
Famous last words. Well, I don't know if you want to talk about this at all, but when we prepped with Kami, and I appreciate her help, she said that you might have some thoughts on Louisiana Tech strategic framework.
Yeah, might have some. We've been working on that for some time. After I got here, and I love to have conversations, right? And I will have leadership team meetings, and I don't use agendas.
Yeah.
And because I really don't care what the product of the meeting is, not at that initial standpoint. I'm really wanting to see how the team interacts with each other.
Sure. Appreciate that.
Table. And it's important. So at one meeting, I put out this nice little pamphlet that we had. I called it the strategic pamphlet. It had been developed about 5 years earlier. And I sit out there and want to say, everyone's seen this. And of course, there's nods and stuff. And I said, okay, good. I said, well, how are we doing? How's it working? How are we living up to it? And take some time to think about it and email me after the meeting what you think we're doing. And the emails are all over the place. And that's one of the problems sometimes with plans. We can be very artistic with the language, and the language is really cool, but it doesn't really tell you what you're trying to do and where you're going to go and how do you measure that. And so we've gone through several months of developing and really just augmenting with that existing thing, because there was hundreds of hundreds of hours devoted to creating that. So I want to dismiss that. But how do we make it something that really resonates with where we are today? And I think we've done that. You get 4 themes, one that focuses on students, working students, and developing them for life and career, and one that's on faculty and staff, and how do you set the conditions where people are personally and professionally fulfilled at the organization while they're delivering on the mission. And then one, it's about integrating with the outside world, the public-private partnerships that are necessary to develop the revenues that we need to operate. And the 4th was on the environment that we work in, but both from aesthetic to functional, and how do you create those environments? And so the themes have been done. The strategic priorities under each of those themes are really, really good. And Bob, a lot of folks in that Adam McGurk, who is in my office, have been a great part of that. Don Schillinger in education has helped co-lead that. And now here's the hard part. Now you're developing the metrics around these strategic priorities. You got to have some measures of how you're working these out. I'm not a fan of SMART goals that, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. I actually give a lecture how they're usually short-sighted, manipulable, anemic.
Defining too, right?
The colleges that want to reach the Southern Region Education Board average of graduation rates in the next 10 years, boy, that's compelling.
Yeah.
It's that charging to work, and that there are aspirations that are worthy of your organization, and that's what we're working.
I appreciate the approach, though. Like, I think that as our study becomes more modernized, we want to be more prescriptive. We want to have more sort of structure to everything. But as a collection of people get together, like, we don't operate like that, right? We can't put things in little boxes specifically. Like, later on, you do need to measure output and this sort of stuff, but you're never going to totally capture everything you need to do. But especially in the formative stages when you're trying to develop a plan, let it be as open as possible, where I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think Louisiana specifically is a great place to, let the good times roll, as it were, right? Like, let's figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There is a place for structure.
Yes.
And like I said, Tanya is much more structured than I. She has access to my calendar, and she attends as many things with me as she possibly can. But she's going through, and she'll tell me something that's on my calendar 3 months from now. And I'm like, I probably wouldn't have crossed that path until like the day before.
Yeah.
And so she loves that structure. And when that structure changes, or when she sees I've got 3 commitments in 2 different cities or multiple facilities at exactly the same time 3 months from now, she's worried about that for the next 3 months. And I'm like, it's going to take care of itself. It'll work itself out. We don't have to worry about that right now. And so you do need that structure to keep you on target and on the right path.
The problem is, if something goes wrong, if you don't have structure, then everyone starts pointing fingers at you. Like, why I told you have structure?
I feel like you two are spirit animals of one another. In some sense. No, I'll say this is I really appreciate you making the time for us today, because I know that you probably had competing priorities in terms of what's been going on.
Yeah, but this is important. One, it's great to talk with alum first, two, this is the kind of stuff I like to think about. And when you're talking about it with people that have a value for this kind of work, it's important to crystallize your own or to enhance your own thinking on it. And it's a great platform to talk about Louisiana Tech University. So I think this is a wonderful institution it's got a sound foundation for F.J. Taylor, Dan Renault, Les Guys, about 62 years of presidents that predated me, that laid a sound foundation. And we're focused right now on building that foundation and recognizing our potential as an institution. So it's a great time for us to talk about that and to celebrate some of the work that's going on here by some wonderful faculty and staff.
Well, shout out the IO program as well, both master's and PhD. That they've done a lot of great work for the university, and
They really have.
I mean, you could lean on them. You probably give them some work.
Free labor.
Absolutely.
I will tell you though, when I am thinking in that realm, I send a weekly email out that just maybe talk the free envelopes about something it's thematic, and then the rest of it's just the highlights of my week prior. And I always think about the IO Psych folks and are they judging me on this? And then I think the EMIS folks, I think, are they judging me on this? Right? I always is.
They are.
The engineers are never judging.
No, not at all.
Just dismissing. They're not.
They didn't even open the email.
That's right.
Well, do we want to try some confusion matrix?
We will try some confusion matrix.
The confusion matrix.
I mean, before we get there, like, you could give me a ranking, like Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, or Johnny Cash.
Well, so
Hard-hitting question.
I will tell you. So Hank Williams was one of a kind, revolutionary. He changed so much, but his career was so short.
Yeah.
By the way, one of those great writers was a guy named Leon Payne, who was my dad's great uncle. He wrote "I Love You Because," and he wrote so many great hits for Hank Williams. So it's hard to beat, Hank. Johnny Cash, he was such a compelling figure.
He's transcendent. Yeah.
By the way, I don't want to end the friendship, or I don't want to cause any controversy for your listeners. Live at San Quentin is better than Folsom.
Oh. We're going to get some emails on this.
The full album. The new release full album, San Quentin's better. But to me, Merle Haggard is the pinnacle when it comes to songwriting, when it comes to musicianship. I saw Merle Haggard's and Chris Christopherson in concert.
Yeah.
Back about 15 years ago. It's one of Haggard's last concert. It was great that he was trying to play guitar with Chris singing. Couldn't figure out which key Chris was singing it because it kept changing. But it was a phenomenal concert. I don't know if anybody has had the songwriting, the musicianship, and the stage presence of Haggard. So he's number one in that.
They still respect the college dean.
Respect the college dean.
Yeah.
The thing that he wrote, Okie from Muskogee, is he's just riding on a bus, the tour bus with his team, and they said, Muskogee, Oklahoma. You think they do here? You think they get a pie? You think they're smoking pot here? And they said, nah, no way. And that's how he wrote something. So it became one of my favorites about Haggard was after the Supreme Court decision that said it was constitutionally protected speech to burn the flag. People were asking him to write a song about it. He wrote this song, Cheta. No one's ever heard it, but only me and crippled soldiers give a damn. And I thought, what a guy who can just touch the prevailing thoughts of his audience and speak to it. But if you listen to some of his older stuff, it is deep, it's compelling, it's artistry, and then you watch him deliver it live.
I know this is an engineering school primarily, but I love how you filter in the liberal arts.
Yeah.
Everything that you say, it is just fascinating.
We've got a great College of Liberal Arts on this campus. In fact, you can get the private liberal arts schools can look to some of the teaching that's going on in that college and would walk away impressed. We've got great faculty there. And you think about, go back to the 13th century when people would gather on the banks of the Seine River in Paris to listen to lectures on logic and on math and art and because they did it was the pathway to social mobility. Now, it came to Sorbonne, produced 33 Nobel Prize winners and 6 field medals winners. It's phenomenal. We have Descartes and Pascal at the same institution. That's not a bad place to be. But going back that long, 700 years ago, this was the liberal arts was the path forward. It hadn't changed, right? We're just adding to it the engineering and science, the hard sciences and new applications of that. But the critical thinking and communication skills, the self-awareness that comes from that the cultural competence, it's got to be the foundation for everything we do.
How about the female division? Patsy Cline, Tammy Wynette, and Loretta Lynn.
Yeah. So Patsy Cline could deliver a song, and nobody, Willie Nelson wrote "Crazy."
Yeah.
And he handed it to Patsy Cline, and that's still one of the most iconic pieces of music ever recorded. The other one you gave me was
Loretta Lynn.
yeah, that was where
And Tammy Wynette.
Timmy on Ed. Anybody that can be married to George Jones for a while, people a lot of credit.
Get a little stamina there, right?
But I tell you, if you ask me, if I just was talking about Merle Haggard, the female that I would put on the top was Patti Loveless.
Really?
And when she came out with Mountain Soul, if you ever get a chance to listen to Mountain Soul, you will think that you are in Eastern Kentucky, in West Virginia, and it just transports you to a different place. Of course, she made her mark singing backup harmonies with Vince Gill while he was singing harmonies for her. And if there's ever been a more angelic mashing of voices of Vince Gill and Patti Loveless, I don't know what it is.
And then this isn't even the Confusion Matrix of that clan. Absolutely. We hear that you do a radio sign off though.
Or going back to those days.
Yeah.
We were told we had to ask.
We have to ask you.
Yeah.
Kicks 104, Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers, Bentonville, and all of Northwest Arkansas.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's where Scott Glenn debuted that amazing movie, My Heroes Have Always Been Cowboys. I know you remember that one.
No.
What are your favorite?
You guys are hitting me with so many references I don't know. I did see Willie Nelson.
We heard that you're into ancient country, which the most ancient thing I can think of is like Woody Guthrie.
Well, go back to 1946, and my dad and his roommates at Tony Salvaggio from Baton Rouge, Eddie Harrelson, who went on to become the principal and superintendent of Jeff Davis schools in Jennings, Louisiana. They had a record player that had a transmitter that was more powerful. So around the dormitories, they could drown out the radio station.
I love that.
And they would play
pirate radio.
Yeah. They would play Tex Ritter's classic hit, Blood on the Saddle, on repetition. Now, if you've never heard Blood on the Saddle, I encourage you to go listen to it. Don't turn it off when it starts. Listen to the whole song. Be transported. He's the guy that wrote "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling." That was the background of High Noon, Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly. The great song. Let's see, it was Rye Whiskey. It's a great song to sing when you're playing poker. So Tex Ritter, it's ancient country. Good enough reference?
Oh, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Wait, his son was John Ritter from Three's Company?
John Ritter. How do you like that?
Well, I could go down a different path. My sister's like infatuated with John Ritter and like goes to his cancer foundation research in Dallas every year and sees his son, whatever the next Ritter is.
But these guys, it's like Eastwood's son. I can't think of his name. Clint Eastwood's son. He hasn't made the massive hits that his father did, but it's fun to watch this generational talent, how they reflect some of their upbringing and that reflect their parents, but yet you couldn't find anything more different than Three's Company, John Ritter, than Blood on the Saddle, and Tex Ritter. So somewhere there's a commonality there that you can draw. It's like
Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee. I don't know. That's another deeper kind. Right?
Well,
I think that's all I got for confusion. I don't know if I can do any better than that.
Yeah, I think we milked that one pretty good. I don't know any ancient country. I'm sorry.
Well, listen, I take you goes with, especially some of the stuff. So you think about House of the Rising Sun.
Yeah.
Right. And the Animals have the iconic version of House of the Rising Sun. Yeah. But you listen to Forever Young, Shabustu, help me with it. Just won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
I don't read.
Oh my gosh. I cannot believe that we cannot think of this guy's name. We put the Traveling Wilburys. None of these roads. No. The greatest artist of all time when it comes to songwriting. Forever Young.
Bob Dylan?
Bob Dylan.
There we go. Hey.
But Bob Dylan, his version of House of the Rising Sun, this dark, foreboding thing. But it's a song that's been around for generations.
Right. These old gospel songs. Yeah.
And so when you go back to that historic, that ancient country music, you find statements on, there was the long documentary on country music. And if you go back and you explore some of that, it takes you to these places. And now we're walking around with music libraries in our hands.
Yeah.
You can go to some of this place. And some of it still resonates. The human condition hasn't changed. The context of it has changed and the reality's changed, but that the human soul hasn't changed at all since those days.
Love and loss, happiness and joy,
Wow. My son, who has got 29 hours of Bob Dylan music on his playlist, is going to be angry with me because I couldn't think of Bob Dylan's name.
I'm just happy I contributed in some way.
Lay Leave You Lay. There you go. That's my favorite.
I saw an interview with Johnny Cash one time where he was talking about he had Bob Dylan who played that song for the first time in his living room.
Really?
Christopherson was there, played me and Bobby McGee at the same time. He had Joni Mitchell there and somebody else, but it was just talking about how they're in his living room, played these 4 iconic songs for the first time. The man, to be a fly on the wall there.
Why am I never invited to these sort of parties? Maybe this is that party. I don't know. Maybe we're making it happen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be here now, man.
In the moment. Yeah.
We want to do some nerdery?
Let's do it.
The nerdery.
Where you want to start?
I think we talked a little bit about higher education, so maybe we could start there. And I know you can't see this in front of you. I apologize for that. So what I'll do is I'll try to just give like a little snippet and we can play around with some ideas. But there was this post of some research by a guy named Rob Sands about the college degree and its value. And so the college degree was the great predictor of future success and career satisfaction. But is that potentially changing? And so he goes through a litany of things. But one of the things that he mentioned is common issues with recent college graduates during interviews. And it says sometimes they have difficulty maintaining eye contact, inappropriate dress, unreasonable compensation requested, inappropriate language use, which I think is kind of how we started the podcast today. And they read directly from their notes, refusal to turn on the camera if it's a virtual interview, and even bringing their parents with them to interview. And I wonder, they get some prescriptions on how higher education could be improved, but I wonder, is this a phenomenon that you're seeing, and how is higher education working to, get back to its rigorous roots to produce, more well-rounded human beings, which has been a kind of a theme of today's episode?
Yeah, we tend to paint with a broad brush sometimes, right? I mean, they think, what is a college graduate? I'll tell you, it varies by college. And so we've made it a part of our purpose here is to provide that well-rounded education. So as we talk about our research, when we're doing research, we do applied research. And so when you come there as a freshman in engineering, you're given a tool bag and a robot on day one, and you have a freshman just right. What an amazing approach to engineering. It's integrated engineering approach that is answering a lot of those questions. The College of Liberal Arts, we talk about core competencies here, the ones I've mentioned: creative thinking, problem solving, teamwork, resilience, self-awareness, recognizing your own cognitive limitations, and understanding how when you're processing information that just because it's something you want to be true doesn't get it more validity than something you disagree with, right? And so we're actually making that part of our educational experience to produce that. My daughter went to a CAT, or liberal arts school in the Dallas area, and they had to read the 27th grade books. It's not, read 26th grade books. It's the English. A lot of Aquinas, a lot of Augustine, but Milton as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're being taught Milton by the old Circean monk. You're getting an education. Well, they have a comprehensive exam at the end of their baccalaureate degree. We went to a graduation, and he said, there's 27 people that'll be walking across the stage, smock out, but they'll be coming back this summer to do more work because they didn't pass their comprehensive exam. And the guy that she married, my beloved son-in-law, said his comprehensive exam, his essays, and I got to the last paragraph, that all of a sudden went off the rails. I couldn't make the words make sense that they flowed together. And I said, you're going to what you're saying. He goes, he was raised. Not perfect. But he'd been successful as well. That made a great pair. But it was because of that transformational experience where they were immersed in higher level thinking, right? That develops those human components. What we'll do is we'll fall prey to these simple notions or the whatever's in the political discourse at the time. And we try to make universities vocational institutes.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got to be more than that. Certainly they got to give you the path to career success, but they got to give you the capabilities that lead to life success. And that's why a college degree from a university like this one, and those that focus on that, is going to be valuable today and will be increasingly valuable tomorrow. We just have to do that across the industry, is develop the whole.
Yeah, that's the value proposition, right? Why are you coming here for 4 years, whatever? The two things you said there, like, really strike me as like the skills of the future, and that's teamwork, being able to collaborate socially, especially as we'll get into some of the AI stuff here in a moment. I won't step on that, but also just general problem solving, like being able to work out a solution to an ambiguous situation. And while there's other things that are like highly technical that are clearly important as basics, those two things will take you super far in life because you can't get around them and be successful.
One, I loved what you said about applied research. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Eros is named Applied Research for Organizational Solutions, right? That's the IOSIC PhD Programs Consulting Group. And I mean, a few years ago, that program got ranked number 1 in about all the IOSIC programs for being the most applied. And I think our graduates are a testament to that. I mean, we go out and we crush in the workplace, and there's other, quote unquote, top IOSIC programs that I think some of those folks really struggle in the workplace. And
yeah, because I mean, like that's not their goal. Their goal is to write research articles and get published and produce more professors and this sort of stuff. And that's definitely needed.
Yeah.
We definitely need, that sort of academic brain, moving the field forward in that way. But
well, that's actually a really good transition to the next one we have from The Economist. So The Economist analyzed 347,000 PhD abstracts from published between the year 1812 and 2023. And they found in every discipline that abstracts have become harder to read, especially in the humanities and the social sciences. And so the one question I wanted to put out to you guys is, first of all, why do you think that is? And second of all, we talked about this a few weeks ago on the pod, that I was actually reading Hugo Munsterberg's, which was one of the founders of biopsychology, his 1913 text, Psychology in the Industrial Sciences, that introduced the field. And it's so readable. It's so simple to read. And I just flew through about 100 pages of it. And I couldn't do that today. And so I wanted to get a commentary from you. Is like, what's going on, and why is it almost like you have to learn a foreign language to become a scientist as the barrier to entry nowadays?
Well, because it's like the union card, your ability to use the latest jargon.
yeah,
It's an evolutionary thing, but not evolution towards something that makes you better. It just makes you more, not
precise.
I don't know if precise is the right word, because we're getting away from precision.
Yeah.
Part of this, when we're doing the strategic framework, we spent an inordinate amount of time picking the words, right? And so when we were talking about it as a group, I went in my office and I came back and I put this book on the table. It's the Highly Selected Thesaurus for the Extraordinarily Literate. Right? What a pretentious title. But it does help you pick the precise words. And sometimes just that one word change changes the whole content, the reception of what you're trying to do. But what we've done is we've invented this never-ending spiraling thing that we've got to use the latest jargon, because that's what makes me sound smart. Not the idea, not the consumability of it. So listen, we're about to release our 1894 magazine. It's an alumni magazine. Haven't printed one in about 5 years. We're doing one that's very substantive, but there's a section of it that's only about the research occurring at Louisiana Tech. It's about 100 snippets of those research studies with some of the QR codes that you can go to that.
Fantastic. That's going to be wonderful.
But the descriptions are written in a language that can be accessible.
Yes.
Mark DaCosta, who is here in biomedical engineering, had discovered copper high aspect ratio structures in our blood. You guys were probably talking about that on the way in.
Yeah.
You can't get us to stop talking about it.
Yes. So what are those? Well, they contribute to wound healing, and they're antibacterial in nature. So if you've ever had a parent, a geriatric paid parent who suffered with bed sores, Mark DaCosta discovered the structure in your blood that can lead to a new therapy that can end torment of bed sores. Now that's relevant.
What a great,
If you read the abstract, you're probably not going to get that, right? Because he has to be in the science.
Yeah.
You have to communicate to other professionals to understand that jargon, because it's a shortcut. That's why you use jargon in the first place, right?
Sure.
And it's also a signaling that we're we're sophisticated in our science, whether we are or not, right? And like to your other point, like it is evolutionary. When you start out, if there's no research in the field, you can use very plain language, but as you funnel down, we figured out the first layer. Let's try to go to the second layer.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be a little more specific. And what do you get rewarded for? Being the leader in the field and having very specific line of research, right?
So I took an advanced grammar class as an undergrad, and it was a fabulous professor. I also took him for an advanced grammar class as a grad. We did nothing but study Cicero, but he was talking about entropy and how the language, as it progresses, is actually breaking down to build and communicate.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
number of words used gets less and less every year.
That's right.
Tower of Babel.
Or Babel, we're there. You're living.
It's funny. I remember this must have been one of my first PSYOPs that we went to, that all of a sudden the word robust got used everywhere. And so previous to the word robust existing, there were just scientific findings. And then all of a sudden, every scientific finding became a robust scientific finding. And I was like, this is just seeing this creep of flowery language being added in for no apparent reason. And I imagine, 10 years from now, there'll be a new scientific keyword that replaces robust. It's like super robust.
If you watch the same newscast, like in the morning, it's a morning news show, someone will use a term, and then it's used every single time. Writ large is the one that they use a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's never the right usage.
Writ large?
Writ large, right? So they'll say, when they're talking about this person and others, or this person and everyone else in this same genre, but they just don't use it appropriately. The one that kills me is when they say, therein lies the rub. They're misquoting Shakespeare. So it's not only the right words, it's also the wrong the wrong word and the wrong application. But it just does that. So you hear something, you think that kind of sounds good, partly because there's a little bit of familiarity with it, but you don't ever think about the meaning of it. And so people will do this all the time. When you go to presentations, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this same thing given at a presentation to a large group that it says, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data." And so every person puts that into a speech, and everyone in the audience is pre-programmed to laugh at it. And I just roll my eyes. I'm like, I got to hear this again. But we do that. And so then it's perpetuating, because someone said, oh, I got to laugh from that. And everyone in the audience says, oh, they said that and they got to laugh from that. So I'm going to start using it. And then it just loses all. George Carlin had a routine one time, and I'm going to go through the whole thing.
Another 7 deadly sins one.
We invented a language that squeezes the life out of life. And that's what we do. We perpetuate these little slogans and these little cute sayings.
Yes.
We squeeze the life out of communication. And that's unfortunate, but I try to do my best at pushing back at that. Would fail with obscure references to movies and country music or kind of stuff.
Well, this is also
squeezing life out of life.
Yeah, just like too much structure on the organization, right? Just kind of squeezes the life out of, or the all humanity out of it.
That's right. Structure is the devil's work.
But this is a situation where you can't bring
Nobody listens at this point of the podcast anyway, so we can say whatever we want.
Yeah, they gave up 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to cruise on?
Yeah, you want to hit us with the last one? I know this is like catnip for Scott.
Well, I'm going to hit you with a different one real quick. Like, check this one out. An alternative path to understand high potential talent. Universal models beware. This article essentially argues that the world's becoming flatter, right? Organizations, and there's not a whole lot of hierarchical movement. So what we can do is rate employee behaviors on various aspects and find horizontal movement aspects to grow into other areas.
I think there's a lot to be said about that, because I think because we all have so much access to so much information.
Yeah.
Right. So broadening our horizons. Because I keep going back to school to study new things. When I was in Baton Rouge, there was a law school that had part-time ED program. So I'm like 6 classes away from a law degree. I probably will never finish because I just can't get to it.
It'll help you with the legislator.
Yeah, it will. But my next thing I'd love to do is to study Irish literature.
Yeah.
Somewhere, right? Just continue to expand, because there's applications for all this stuff. You've got the subject matter, right? And so you can go through, as most people do, a traditional academic pathway. As you start here, you keep building vertically up until you just master. And we need that. There's no part of that. But when you can also build horizontally and even go to places that are not your comfort zone, that's when you develop as humans. And so you you take that as an individual and you spread it across a community. I think it's when you reach that higher level, that higher plane of thinking and living and socializing. It's pretty cool. I don't know if that's really what they were getting at in the article, but to me, it's a great way to develop.
I don't know what they were getting at. Like, this is the Journal of Consulting Psychology. Oh, wait, I'm the lead author. Oh, yeah. Check it out. Just
plug in a little Scott's research. Well, now, what's the title again, Scott?
It is an alternative path to unlocking high potential talent. Universal models beware. Yeah, we conducted this research some time ago, kind of gets at the research process, the publication process, rather, where we went out, surveyed a bunch of managers on the sort of attributes that their employees have and essentially try to identify different paths besides vertical movement in the organization to other avenues that they could explore. So managing bigger teams, taking on bigger scope, taking on more, cognitively demanding work, these sort of things. And we showed that you can use behavioral traits and sort of aspects to guide them into different sort of avenues in the organization other than senior leadership or moving up one level. Thank you. It took a long time to get this through. This is a long process.
Was it worth it?
I love the process. I really do. It's rewarding in itself, and just being able to see your name in lights is fantastic too.
Can I build on that for a second?
Please do. Please do.
So one of the things that you see as a trend, especially in some of the larger tech firms right now, is the elimination of middle management roles and the relationship that I think that if I were getting into these tech leaders' minds, that eventually they see that the role of middle management will actually be done by AI. So you'll only have a few executives, a bunch of individual contributors, and then AI layer in the middle.
Yeah.
And then eventually the individual contributors will all be AI. And then eventually all the executives will be AI and everything's AI. But in the meantime, does what you researched have a perspective on that phenomena of the elimination of middle management?
We didn't say that specifically, but there is a body of research out there that suggests that middle managers are perhaps what's important layer, right? That they are the ones that can or need to translate what upper management needs down to the individual needs of lower level employees that actually do a lot of the day-to-day work, right?
Well, which when you think about the flattening of the organization, so and when I was in Baton Rouge, right across the river is the Dow Chemical facility, one of the largest facilities. So they have a site leader. And then basically everybody else is at the same level.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And so you're
like 100 direct report sort of thing.
Right. And so it works, but you're creating ad hoc teams for various things.
Yeah.
Right. You might have a team leader. Think about if you're familiar with the orchestra Orpheus, one of the great orchestras in the world that is distinct from every other one for one reason. There's no conductor.
Oh, interesting. It's like self-organizing network of instruments. That's really wild.
But what does it require? It requires a level of trust amongst the organization, ability to communicate, ability to tolerate conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Think things differently. But it results in, at the end of the day, it may be a more difficult process to get there, but actually a glorious output. And it's one of the reasons why I was talking to a tech firm that was establishing in New Orleans. And I was talking about the computer science graduates we had, computer information systems graduates, and they said, that's great. We want to talk to your music majors. Because we can teach them which buttons to push, but we can't teach them to be totally rely on each other to achieve team success.
Yeah.
So you can be a great musician in an orchestra and you can play your part perfectly, but if you're not in tune with those around you, you can't have individual success. The organization has to be successful. So you're either all successful or you're all not.
It's called an organization, right? It's not called a one-man army, right? You need more than one person, which is where, once again, social skills, being able to work in a team, problem solve.
That's what got fascinated with DAOs a few years ago, the decentralized autonomous organizations that were big in the crypto community. I don't know if they still exist anymore, but those were big for a hot moment.
I don't know if it ever really took off, but yeah, it's a really interesting sort of concept, and it may be where we're going as organizations, as you need to be more flexible and adaptable to the way things go, right?
How to compete with AI agents.
AI agents.
You want to hit us with the last one, though?
We'll hit us with the last one. Does AI make you smarter? Well, the answer is maybe. It depends, really. So there's a growing body of literature that essentially suggests augmented human performance. AI is augmented human performance in the sense of raising the floor. So the lowest employees or the lowest performing people can raise their performance up to a certain level. But there's also the element that at a certain point, people just take for granted what is provided to them. It just becomes an automation, right? You just take whatever the AI spits out, you put it in there. But where the real magic happens is where you can lean on your vast abilities, your greater knowledge across different landscapes. So this research essentially investigated like who benefits the most from Gen AI. So they had this really fascinating study. So they conducted two different ones. One where they asked people to create 500 word short stories, and they gave them a cognitive ability test and had these rated. And the other one, they created song lyrics. And as a incentive, they actually recorded it with a professional recording artist. And they had that rated. Yeah, really cool.
Wild.
And what they found is that the people with the greatest cognitive ability tend to benefit from this, but not because of their specific skill in an area. That if you have deep technical knowledge in an area, that tends to be diminished. But it's really your broad general mental ability. That's where you can really connect the dots. That's where having a Gen AI partner on board really helps out and benefits you the most.
I have a hypothesis on this,
Yeah,
and maybe the research covers it because I didn't look into it in detail, is it probably helps with your blind spots.
Yeah.
Right? So if you know a lot about, 8 out of 10 things, it helps you fill in the gaps on those 2 out of 10 that you know nothing about. And that hopefully rises, the level of all boats.
This is what they talk about, like humor research. If you look at humor, like who's the most humorous, it's usually someone that's like really intelligent and really worldly. They know a lot of things and then connect dots and make, humorous connections. Like
Really
awesome. Other things. Yeah. Really neuron. Yeah. Rough break, rough childhood. Yeah. They roasted priest growing up.
Apparently.
But you think about that. So I have to talk about the work of faculty that are doing some very specialized, very complex work. And it's part of my job. I have to sell that to people. Excuse me. So it can be very helpful for someone like me to get the little bit of knowledge, 2 minutes worth of knowledge to talk about it. Of course, so what I can bring to the table is the ability to describe how it impacts, why it's relevant to the layperson. We're going to build our Forest Products Innovation Center here. It's going to be built mass timber approach to using yellow pine to construct the buildings. So it's going to be a learning institute in and of itself. But it's going to be a great research laboratory for us when you see all the trees back behind me. How do we find ways to grow trees better, faster?
Yeah.
The renewable resource have more useful uses for timber, right? I don't have to know anything else about loblolly pines and the infestations of different mites or whatever is tearing us. I got enough of that, right? And so then I could describe it to others. But having those around me that understand it, or having an AI tool that can help me quickly digest it for just 150, 200 words can be amazing tool. Now, but it doesn't replace the human piece of that. That's going to be the vital part, because you have these tools, you can start to rely on them, overly rely on them, and then it just makes you totally ineffective.
Well, I think that's the point. Like when you just rely on it for total automation, that's where you kind of get in trouble. I think about, I work with software engineers, and very advanced ones, right? 10 years in service, and they get paid handsomely, right? You can take a tool like some sort of generative AI and make a 1-year software engineer pretty much as good as a 10-year software engineer. And the reason why you would pay someone so much for such that experience isn't necessarily because they can do the job, is because they can do it super efficiently. So you can take someone right out of the field and make them pretty dang good pretty quickly. And I don't know really where that leaves us, right?
Well, so remember when coding was the thing? Yeah, I learned how to code. And they were actually in K through 12 systems replacing foreign language requirements with coding. As coding is a foreign language. As if that's really what foreign language is about, teaching the words you have to use. But guess what? You can use AI to develop code now, especially some of the painstaking, labor intensive, so literally process parts of developing AI, and you could focus on the higher level things. So it's very useful in that regard. But I remember the 8-week coding boot camps that were proliferating, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was sitting on a council, and a guy comes and presents his 8-week boot camp and says, we can produce a computer scientist in 1/8 of the time it takes a university to do it. But it's so much more added to that when you think about developing the broad human being, so it can replace that mundane. I went to a college, and the administrative assistant came into my office. This is 2 years after the iPhone had come out. This is 2009. She had a big desk calendar, and she says, look, I'll write all your appointments on this desk calendar, and I have one on my desk. I do the same thing there. And I said, well, listen, I don't really use a calendar. I use this phone. And she retired.
I love that.
Right. Her whole job was about doing these mundane tasks. And so with executive assistants, they used to type in business cards and Rolodex, but now they're making strategic decisions and communications with people that affect here $150 million enterprise. So again, the technology has replaced the task, but now you're demanding more higher level thinking from the individual. So I think there's a connection between those two things.
So yeah, like once again, like say like everyone becomes roughly equal in their ability to write code. What's left? The ability to connect with others and solve problems. Like not to harp on that too much, but
why are you writing code? What's the
purpose? Yeah. What are we trying to solve?
Is this really the problem that we need to solve, or is it? Or we're solving a symptom of a problem, and there's something even bigger.
Cole's article earlier was like, I found it really interesting as well, about the college students and like how they're approaching the work world. And it said something to the effect of like, in the past, like in 1980, college students would spend 40 hours a week on work, and now they spend less than 10. And they use that sort of a knock on college students. And I got to thinking about, I was like, yeah, but going to the card catalog was fucking work. That takes time. Going to the stacks is work. That takes time.
Well, it was actually a useful skill to be developing.
Oh, absolutely. Everything takes time. Now you can like just Google something, go right to the exact page, find exactly what you need.
To use the Rolodex example from earlier, I get so frustrated, in my Gmail, if I'm like typing someone's name and it doesn't automatically their email, like, oh, you should know better by now.
I remember my mother in the mid 70s with her IBM Selectric typewriter working on my dissertation.
Yeah.
And how much time and effort she spent on formatting, taking a ruler and measuring a margin.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then we had to drive all over Fayetteville, Arkansas looking for a stack of 100% cotton bond paper so that she could print it on that paper.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with her dissertation on curriculum and education? And then she went back to get another degree in library science. And I made a mistake of making fun of her that she needed a graduate degree to calculate fines and the stamp due dates and books. So she made me read her thesis and then tested me on it. Never made fun of librarian. That's a distraction, diversion for what we're getting to. But we spent so much time on the process instead of what the real result was the document, the ideas, the concepts, and the synthesis of those things into a readable, digestible document.
I will also, like, I know we're running short on time now, but I will also make the argument that sort of downtime or process of thinking is super valuable too, that we may be missing with Gen AI. As you get the answer immediately and you're like, okay, I'm going to move on with life or move on to the next thought, you don't get that chance to ruminate and really dig into it.
There's so much value.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the part that we can sometimes miss. And that's what I was talking about, this best practice stuff that sometimes you can go, borrow, steal an idea from somebody else, but it's the process of developing, especially when it comes to bringing other people to the table, that it's so important to organizations. I'm afraid we're getting away from that in some ways, but
absolutely. Well, this has been such a pleasure, Dr. Henderson. Thank you so much for joining us today and making some time to meet with us. I couldn't be more proud to have you as the president of the university. So thank you for being here. Before I give you the final word, though, Scott, any parting words for Dr. Henderson?
Oh, I should have saved the radio sign off for now. That sounded so bad. No, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. We really appreciate what you're doing for the university and representing it. We hope we can do that too.
Well, I got to tell you this. One of the you talk about new things, new ideas, and technology advancing. So you probably don't remember this transition from dials to pinpoint radio frequencies, right? So fixed 104 is actually 103.9 on your radio. So if you listen to FM radio, everyone gives the point. The Kix 104 was such an iconic sign off. To this day, they say 104. It's hard to find any other radio station that doesn't use it.
Oh, really?
Well, not that that's the most valuable part of this, but it's important to realize there's some sacredness to tradition that's worth it.
A little fuzziness too. Like we're about 103.9. We're
almost 104. Yeah,
it is directionally correct.
Yeah, but way to tie it in, Tillman.
It was fantastic. I've enjoyed this so much. I'm so proud of what you guys do. I love this podcast. You cover some great issues. You have fun while doing it, and that's what makes it such an entertaining hour. This one's a little bit longer than an hour, but it's great to have you on campus and beautiful Wiley Tower, tallest building between Shreveport and Jackson. But I'm just very proud to have y'all and listen, go Dogs.
Well, thank you.
Dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Dr. Jim Henderson. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.